90% of everything alive on Earth nearly didn't survive the cold that came next. We did. Not because we were the strongest, not because we had fur, claws, or the ability to hibernate. We survived because of something no other species had mastered: the ability to carry warmth with us, wherever we went. This is the story of the coldest chapter in human history, and the humans who refused to disappear. 40,000 years of ice. This is how we outlived it. Around 33,000 years ago, Earth began sliding into its coldest era in 100,000 years. Scientists call it the Last Glacial Maximum. Ice sheets over 2 kilometers thick buried the North, Canada, Scandinavia, much of Northern Europe, all frozen solid. Sea levels dropped more than 120 meters. Water that once filled oceans became solid ice. Global temperatures fell by roughly 6 degrees. Lush river valleys turned into frozen, wind-scoured tundra. For most of Earth's history, cold like this meant extinction. It had wiped out species before, and it would again. But somewhere across the frozen plains, humans were doing something remarkable. Not just surviving the cold, learning to live inside it, season after season, for tens of thousands of years. This wasn't a single winter to survive. It was an era to outlast, and somehow humans did. Here's exactly how. Picture a small group moving across Ice Age Ukraine, 15,000 years ago. The wind here can drop the felt temperature to -40. There are no forests for shelter. Trees can't survive this far into the cold. There is no wood to burn. And yet, in the near distance, smoke rises from the ground. The shelter waiting for them isn't made of branches. It's built from the curved ribs and skulls of woolly mammoths. Dozens of them, stacked and layered into a dome, sealed with hide and packed snow. Inside, a small fire burns fat rendered from animal bone, since there's no wood left to feed it. As the storm outside intensifies, the group inside doesn't just endure the night. They repair clothing stitched with fine bone needles, needles fine enough to thread sinew through multiple layers of hide. Clothing so precisely tailored, it traps body heat efficiently, almost as effectively as modern thermal gear. Outside, temperatures continue to fall. Inside, humans are doing something almost no other mammal can do, choosing exactly how warm they want to be. This wasn't luck. It was a system of technologies, refined over tens of thousands of years, working together, not alone. Fine bone-sewing needles, some over 40,000 years old, allowed for fitted layered clothing instead of simple draped hides, a difference that dramatically improves insulation. Controlled fire use, likely mastered even earlier. Meant warmth wasn't dependent on the weather. It could be created, maintained, and carried from camp to camp. Dwellings built from mammoth bone showed deliberate architectural planning. Bones sorted by size and function, arranged to maximize structural strength and insulation, using the only large building material on a treeless steppe. And crucially, none of this was done alone. Ice Age human groups show clear evidence of long-distance social networks, sharing tools, techniques, and even mates across hundreds of kilometers. Cooperation wasn't a nice-to-have. On the Ice Age tundra, it was survival itself. A group that shared, made it through the winter. A group that didn't, often simply vanished. Let's look at exactly what made this survival system work. Bone needles begin appearing in the archaeological record around 40,000 years ago. Their tiny eye holes are barely visible to the naked eye, drilled painstakingly by hand, one at a time. Layered clothing traps warm air between each layer, the same principle modern thermal jackets still rely on. Fire changes everything a body needs to survive cold. It cooks food, purifies water, and holds off frostbite. Controlling fire meant controlling the coldest nights. Mammoth bone dwellings have been excavated across Ukraine and Russia. Some sites contain the remains of over 100 mammoths. That's not one hunt. That's generations of accumulated resources. Radiocarbon dating tells us how long these shelters were used. Some sites show repeated use across many winters. This wasn't a one-time survival trick. It was a repeatable system, passed down, passed from one generation to the next. Long-distance exchange networks moved raw materials across the tundra. Shells, ochre, and toolstone traveled hundreds of kilometers. This tells us these groups were deeply connected, not isolated bands fighting the cold alone. Every piece of this system reinforced the others. Fire enabled cooking. Cooking enabled better nutrition. Better nutrition enabled the energy needed for hard winter labor. None of these adaptations worked in isolation. Together, they were unstoppable. But here's what's easy to miss in this story. Neanderthals had lived in cold Europe for hundreds of thousands of years, far longer than modern humans had even been there. In many ways, they were more physically built for the cold. Stockier bodies that retained heat more efficiently. Larger nasal cavities to warm freezing air before it reached the lungs. Greater cold tolerance built directly into their biology. By every physical measure, they should have had the advantage. And yet, during this same era, they disappeared. Modern humans arrived with a physically weaker cold tolerance, thinner bodies, smaller nasal cavities, less natural insulation. By biology alone, they were the underdog in this story. But they carried something Neanderthals used far less extensively. Larger social networks stretching across greater distances. More sophisticated, rapidly evolving tools. Clothing that adapted faster than any single body ever could. Ideas that spread between groups in a single generation. Biology takes thousands of generations to adapt. Culture can adapt in a single winter. That difference in speed may have decided everything. Many researchers believe it wasn't one single cause. Climate stress, competition, and shrinking populations likely combined. But the pattern is hard to ignore. The species with the deeper social safety net kept going. The species without it, eventually, did not. In the coldest, most punishing environment our species has ever faced, biology wasn't the deciding factor. Behavior was. Every needle stitched was a decision. Every shared tool was a decision. Every fire kept alive through the night was a decision. None of it was automatic. None of it was guaranteed. It had to be chosen every single day for 40,000 years. This is the real story of the Ice Age, not a story of who was strongest, a story of who adapted fastest, together. Every layer of clothing was shared knowledge, worn on the body. Every mammoth-bone dwelling was shared effort, built into shelter. Every trade route was shared trust, stretched across the tundra. The Ice Age didn't reward the toughest individual. It rewarded the most connected community. 40,000 years later, that lesson hasn't changed. We still survive best when we build, share, and adapt together. The ice tested us once. It taught us who we really are. So the Ice Age didn't test which species had the thickest fur or the toughest body. It tested which one could build the smartest shelter, share the most useful idea, and stitch the warmest coat. Together, generation after generation. In the dark, in the cold, for 40,000 years. And somehow, we're still here to tell the story. If the ice came again tomorrow, would we still know how to survive it? Or has comfort made us forget? This is Oviora. Keep wondering.